Hey, welcome to Gospel Compass. This is Tim Strutler. I'm the pastor of the Goodlettsville and Gallatin Church, and I am joined today with a dear friend. He's one of the first people that really welcomed me to this community. He was the president of the Ministerial Association for 20 years, and he is the pastor of the Nashville Cowboy Church. It's Dr. Harry Yates. Harry, it's great to have you. I appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Pastor Tim. It's always good to be around you.
Dr. Harry Yates, he's got multiple degrees. You'd never know it because he's just such a down-to-earth guy. But I've said this for a long time. I've said it in front of you. I think you're a genius. And I want to talk a little bit today about why I think that. And so I don't say that to puff you up. In all seriousness, today I want to share with you how the Cowboy Church came to be. And I'd like for Dr. Yates to talk to you about the vision, because I believe this is an incredible model for the church to not to do cowboy church, but to think this way. And so I'm excited about sharing these things with you today. I'm going to tell you why else I think you're a genius. You were the president of the Goodlettsville Ministerial Alliance for 20 years. And he stepped down, and they asked me if I would take over for a year. Here's how he's a genius. He steps down, COVID-19 takes over. I'm having to lead the Ministerial Alliance through COVID-19. We can't meet, we can't gather together, and you got out just in the right time.
Hey, timing is everything. It is.
Well, Harry, you are well known around this community. You've also been well known by a host of people who have come to see you preach. We have also, I know you're well known because you've married a special lady.
Yeah.
And Joanne Cash Yates is a sweetest, most spirit-filled, loving person that you'd ever want to meet. She's the sister of Johnny Cash, and I got to hear so many great stories with you recently, and I really enjoyed that.
Well, I appreciate it, and she is the most spiritual person to put up with me for almost 50 years
Almost 50 years. Hey, your story, I've heard you tell your story a little bit, but you weren't always a man of God. Would that be a fair way to say it?
Oh, yeah, it'd be more than fair.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because there may be people watching that do not know the Lord and may think their life is just a ruin. But I know if God can save me, if he can save you, he can save anybody. He loves everybody. Tell them a little bit about your background.
Well, I'll be glad to do that. I'll make it fairly quickly so we can get into what we're doing and where we're headed and what we feel the Lord is using us to do.
Yeah.
First of all, I was born in northern Ohio. When I was 5 years old, I got tired of living there. So my family moved to Texas, and so I was raised pretty much on a ranch, my grandfather's ranch in West Texas. Hence, I've always been a cowboy.
Hey, and you don't just wear a hat. You knew Stetson himself, didn't you? Or your grandfather did.
But my grandfather and John B. Stetson were very, very close friends.
That's pretty cool.
And my grandfather was delivering mail on horseback.
Wow.
Back in the early 1900s. So
wow.
He was always a mailman and all that. But I was raised on this ranch most of the time, and he was one of the real old timer cowboy people, like you see on Matt Dillon and people like that. But and then we moved back to Ohio when I was a teenager, and I graduated from high school in a little town in northern Ohio, and got married and settled down and was a teacher but when I first went to college, it's a long story, but let me try to quicken as much as possible. Yeah. I graduated from high school when I was 15. I had turned 16 in August and was in college in September.
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about anything, and we were down in the hills of Kentucky, and I actually... What do I want to say? I say I also actually ran moonshine around Hazard, Kentucky.
I was hoping you'd tell that story. This is the Dukes of Hazzard right here, running moonshine to pay for college. Now, we don't recommend that. It's a good way to also pay for prison, but you made it.
But I made it, and it was great, and it was okay. 'Cause I didn't. I mean, I was a young guy. I was teaching school when I was 19. So,
Wow.
It just everything came fairly easy, and but I enjoyed that. And then I'll quickly run through this.
Yeah.
I got married. We had 3 children, and 7 years later, my first wife ran off with my brother. And no kidding. And I told people that all the time.
Yeah.
My first wife ran off with my brother, and I miss him. But and I know you can edit this out if you want to, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
And I said, so anyway, but all that was forgiven and forgotten.
Right.
And they stayed married 50 years.
Right.
And he just passed away a couple of years ago, and everything was wonderful. There was no problems.
Right.
But anyway, and so because of that, I ran away from home at 27 and went to Nashville and went to my sister's house, who had already moved there because her husband played steel guitar for George Jones and Connie Smith and people like that. And my first night there, I'll never forget, it was Good Friday. And my life was, I was an alcoholic for 10 years. I was a drug addict. But I was functional because I taught school. And so, but after, when school was out, then I did these other things. And I'm not proud about all of that, but it's just part of what got me to where I am.
Right.
And so anyway, I came to her house on Good Friday afternoon, and I said, I want to stay here for a few days, and then I have no direction, no place to go, Anyway, so I went to, she said, well, tonight we're having church. And I said, it's Friday.
Yeah.
Nobody has church on Friday. And she said, well, it's Good Friday. And I said, and you go to church? My sister and I have been close all of our lives. You know her.
Yeah.
And I said, you mean you go to church? She said, yeah. And we've been praying for you. And I want you to go tonight. There's some of them stars will be there, like Connie Smith and, people like that. I said, okay, well, I'll go. But reluctantly. Well, I that night I got saved. I gave my heart to the Lord. And
Pastor there was Jimmy Snow, Hank Snow's son.
Hank Snow's son.
Yeah.
And it's a funny story. Again, so much to it. But I gave my heart to the Lord, and when I had gone to church as a child, and got all the little pins that say you never missed Sunday school.
Right.
I'd gone to Sunday school.
Right.
Never went to church. But in all my life, up to that moment, I had never heard that Jesus loved me, even though I'd been in the church.
Yeah.
I never heard those words. So when I was at the altar, this man was praying with me, and he said, I want to tell you, Harry, Jesus loves you. Instantly, that became life in my life.
Wow.
And that night, God delivered me from drugs, alcohol, and myself.
Wow.
And from then on, 6 weeks later, I was the youth pastor there.
Now, that is not the standard prescription for the training of youth ministry, but God certainly used it.
But God used us in a mighty way because, when the night I got saved, I'll never forget, I looked up into the face of Jesus, not literally, but...
Yeah.
And, what are we using? Virtually.
Yes.
And I said, if you don't want me forever, you need to get rid of me now, because this is a lifelong commitment.
And that's what a heart change does.
It does.
When God comes into your life, he changes your heart. As Ezekiel says, I will take out your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh that you may desire to serve me.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened to you. Thank God for that.
And I was delivered from alcohol instantly, and I have not had a drink since that day before that. I haven't had taken any of those drugs or anything.
Wow. And you got to see a lot of different people come to faith in that time, as it sounds like revival was happening.
Yeah.
And you tell a story about Chris Christopherson coming to faith, which was fascinating to me. Go ahead.
I was fixing to tell that story because Chris and Connie Smith was one of the real leaders among the Christian movement in the entertainment business, as was John later on.
Yes.
And when I say John, I'm talking about Johnny Cash.
Right.
Everybody knows him as. But when we Brother Snow had church on Thursday night. Generally, his midweek was Thursday. He said that way get other folks come that go on Wednesday somewhere else. But anyway, and one night, and Connie brought a lot of people to the church. And anyway, so Chris came one night, and when the altar call happened, he went to accept the Lord, and I got to be the person who was the worker that went down and prayed with him. And he gave his heart to the Lord. And a couple of quick things after that. The next night, Brother Snow had this program on the Opry, the last show on the Grand Ole Opry, every Friday night during those years was something called Grand Ole Gospel Time. And so I was his associate at that place for a long time. Anyway, and so he asked Chris on that Thursday night, say, can you come and sing?
So he gets saved. Next night he's singing gospel music on the Opry.
Yeah. And he said, and so we're backstage about, 30 or 45 minutes ahead of time to go on. And Brother Snow said, well, Chris, I need you to do 2 songs. And Chris says, I don't know 2 gospel songs. I know Amazing Grace. And Jimmy Snow said, but you're a songwriter, write one. So I don't have anything to write with. So I went and get a napkin from the backstage area and a pen and gave it to him, and he sat down and he wrote what happened to him the night before. Why me, Lord?
Why me, Lord?
What have I ever done to deserve even one of the blessings you've shown?
And that song went on to be sung by Elvis, many people, right?
Everybody.
But what a story to be able to witness that happen right there.
A few years later, Ralph Emery asked him on his program one day. He said, Chris, you've done movies with Barbra Streisand, A Star Is Born. You've done movies with all these actors and actresses, and you're one of the greatest songwriters ever, and all of these things. He said, I know this is probably a hard question, but is there anything in your mind that sticks out greater than anything else of all these things? And he said, oh, that's easy, Ralph. He said, that's the night I gave my life to Jesus at Jimmy Snow's church.
Wow. Well, what an experience.
Ralph said, we're going to a commercial now.
Duh. What a great experience. Now, your experience there at church as a youth pastor led to other places, including a mission trip. Well, actually, just a trip with Jimmy, was it, to Israel?
Yes.
And there was a special lady on that trip.
Yes. We all went together to Israel. And Joanne had come into the church about 6 months after me in October.
And by the way, we're going to tell her story later, both of your stories together, but fascinating how that happened. But go ahead.
Anyway, and so we all, a bunch of us young folks, went to Israel together on a Holy Land tour. It was our first time to go, and because he used to take tours a couple of times a year. And it was great because we got to go several other times after that. But anyway, and so long story short, we fell in love in Tel Aviv, came home and got married 2 months later.
Yeah.
And that's been almost 50 years ago.
I told you, I think you all need to write a song, I Fell in Love in Tel Aviv.
I fell in love in Tel Aviv.
And so you married Joanne, you have a blended family. How many kids were in that family?
Well, there were 3. She had 3 and I had 3. We're the Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
And so you blend this family together, which is a challenge in and of itself. But eventually you all went out on the road, didn't you?
Yes. In 1975, God called us out into evangelism and as a singing group. And the Yates family, and that's who we were. And but we'd sing, and then I'd preach, and all over the world. We've ministered in all 50 states and over 80 countries in every continent except Antarctica. And we've done that from we were there for almost 16 years.
Wow.
And then this story is will take a minute.
Go ahead.
But some people, most evangelists are called to Florida in the wintertime, right? God called me to northern Saskatchewan,
Canada,
for 11 winters.
Wow.
In a row. But there was nothing else going on, and people still came out and went places. So it was a great ministry.
Yeah.
And so for all those years, we lived on the road in a bus or a motorhome, and then one night we were in Nipawin, Saskatchewan. Never forget it. And the Lord woke me up in the middle of the night and spoke to me. And when I say spoke to me, I want to explain that, because sometimes people say God spoke to me and they're thinking I'm like Adam and me and God are walking hand in hand and talking back and forth. It's not quite like that. I mean, he can do that, but generally he just makes that impression upon your heart that this is what you need to be doing. And he woke me up in the middle of the night, and he said these in my spirit. I got I want you to cancel everything you got booked and go back to Nashville. Joanne's mother's going to pass away within a year. And we'd been on the road for all those years, and we didn't see much family unless we happened to be going through. Well, we had a little place in North Carolina where we went to hide and rest and all of that. So went home, got rid of all of that, and I'm sitting there, and the phone rings. It's our daughter Rhonda, and she says, she was crying. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Well, my husband's got to go to New York City for training, and I've got to go with him. I don't have anybody to watch my house and my dog." And we were sitting there waiting for God to open up where he wants us to go and what he wants to do. And I said, "Well, how about your mother and I?" And she said, "I'm not kidding. I'm really upset." And I said, "I'm not kidding either." I said, "We are coming to Nashville. We don't have a place. We've always paid cash for everything, so we don't have any credit. We don't have any money because we canceled everything. We've been on the road." And so anyway, we worked that out, and so they left, and we moved into their house for 3 months, because he'd be back in 3 months. And anyway, and so it's hard for people to believe what I'm fixing to say. It was hard for me to believe it till it happened to me. But for 3 months, God would not allow us to work anywhere because we spent so much time with Mama. She wasn't even sick. There was no problem.
Just being there with her.
Just being there.
Right.
And but anyway, we were. The great thing was she was not even sick, and I'm questioning now. How you do.
Right.
But anyway, so it's getting to be about the time for Ron and them to come back. Anyway, but people sent us money to Rhonda's mailbox. Some people we have still never met to this day. I mean, money to live on.
Isn't that something?
It just was, it's miraculous.
Yeah, I tell you what, I've seen that same thing in our lives. Growing up as kids, mom and dad in the ministry, couldn't pay the house payment to the penny. The money came in over the weekend, and take that down to the bank on that very day.
On the day, yeah.
And it's really interesting how God leads us through these things. I think about that song, "When I look over the mountains, the valleys where I've been, it makes me know that I love him so much more than I did then." Because we can see how his hand has guided us. I mean, you would never think the things that Joanne went through, the things that you went through, that God would use. Well, he says to the Romans, all things work together for the good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. No, that's Philippians, isn't it? Yeah, Philippians. All things work together for those who love God are called according to his purpose. And so we see here that we can trust that God takes us through this journey, and it's not always fun. But he took you guys basically on the road for 16 years as seminary training for what he was about to do. Yeah. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how in this time, now this kind of leads us up to where God's starting to move on you about a church.
Okay, let me finish that other story right quick. We'll talk more about that when we do an interview with Joanne and I at a later date. Yeah. But Mama, we didn't have any money for a house or anything. But miraculously, God provided us a house. And Mama got sick we moved there to Rhonda's house in May. Mama got sick announced to us that she was sick at Thanksgiving, and she died March.
Wow.
That we buried her on her birthday in March.
Wow.
Like 10 months from the time we moved back.
Wow.
Within that year. And but then to go with what you were saying, when they had nowhere to go, Rhonda was coming home, so God miraculously supplied this place. And I'm saying, okay, but God, what do you want us to do?
Right.
And it just...
Let's just pause right there, because Most people don't ask that question.
Right.
God, what is it you want me to do?
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of training. I have a lot of education. I could do anything. Mom used to ask me all the time when I come home and see her, she'd say, all your education, you get a good job. Well, you're out there running around the country.
Right.
You know? I was like,
Right.
oh.
Getting more education. Yeah.
So, but anyway, what happened then is I just really, again, that impression came that God wanted us to start a church. Well, I'm not a three-piece suit and tie guy. And for most churches back then, everybody was pretty much, it wasn't casual like it is in some places now.
No, very much coat and tie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And vest. And I always felt like I was being cinched up, you know. But anyway, and so when the Lord spoke to me about that, and again, an impression that he wants to start a church in a bar. Well, first of all, my first thought was, God delivered me from the bars and all of that. But so I called my friend Billy, and he and I told him about the idea. And he used to book all the talent on the Grand Old Gospel Time, and I taught him in school years ago before that, and all of that. And I called him and I said, I really have this idea, and I want us to see what we can do. So he and I went out one day, and then went to the Opryland Hotel. They had a bar there called Jack Daniels.
Right.
And I thought it was a great venue, and they don't serve alcohol on Sunday until after 2 o'clock anyway. And we just were looking for something for Sunday morning. And they eventually said that they didn't want to do that because they didn't have to let everybody else do it.
Right.
So we went up the street to what was then the Holiday Inn, and the bar was called the Sweetwater Lounge. And funny thing is, my grandfather's ranch was 20 minutes from Sweetwater, Texas.
Yeah.
So when I walked in, I told Billy, this is the place. And I said, so let's find out what they'll do. Went and talked to the people, and we looked at the venue, and then I went home, told Joanne, I think God really wants us to start a church in a bar, which she was more adamant against that than I was. But she said, we'll go talk to the bar manager and the hotel manager, and if they say they're not going to charge us, then I think that'll be a sign
Then
from
you'll
God.
know. Right.
And so I said, okay, that'll be good. So we went over, Billy and Joanne and I, and the manager, food and beverage manager, and we were talking, and he said, well, what does this do for us? And I said, what it does for you is it brings entertainment people to your facility with name value. It brings, how many do you seat? 100 and something. And I said, and 100 and something people, where several of them will stay for lunch at your restaurant, and
Right.
and I said, oh, that, and so he says, well, what do you want? I said, we just want to use it, and I don't want to pay anything for it. And he said these words, Joanne, she loves this story because he said these words. He said, that's a hoot, let's do it.
That's a hoot, let's do it.
So for 4 years, we were there. We outgrew it, and we moved to the Texas Troubadour.
Hey, what year was it that the Cowboy Church started there at Sweetwater Lounge?
1990. What year is this? This is our 31st year.
31 years ago, 1990.
Yeah.
Wow.
1990.
Now, at the time, you'd maybe seen another Cowboy Church up in Canada?
I saw one Cowboy Church in Canada, and it was just it was like a bunch of the rodeo people.
Right.
Now, the old rodeos used to have a Cowboy Church service. They called it Cowboy Church.
Right.
On a Sunday mornings in a lot of the rodeos, where even in the old days, I'm a student of Western history, of course, and in the old days when people would build a town, for instance, the very first building they'd ever build was a saloon.
Right.
And they used it for everything. They used it for their town meetings. They used it for church whenever a circuit rider would come through. And so we were basically doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And then when town got big enough to where they could afford a church, they would move from the church first to a theater, You know, where like Lily Langtree and all
Right.
those people used to sing. And then they would finally, it'd be years before they would build a church.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't understand building a building that you
was
use
just
once in a
hour.
while.
Right. Yeah.
And so we were much the same way.
Yeah.
So we started this church in the lounge, and here's the way that I really feel that the Lord explained it to us to what to do. We have a lot of music. We and I preach 10 minutes and give an altar call.
Now, by the way, don't you all think that that's what I'm going to do?
Yeah, yeah. And don't go tell your pastors wherever you are. But 10 minutes. Now on Sunday night and Wednesday night, I'm
You're right.
normal.
Yeah.
But Sunday morning I'm not.
Right.
But and so what we had, right from the beginning, we started with
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to have to take a break.
Apparently the battery.
Oh, okay.
what you got
We have-
to change the tape.
We have another one.
Yeah. No, actually, just leave it.
Oh, the battery.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I ran the battery out.
Where do we need to go back to? How long are we right now?
Probably the
25.
Oh, we're good. We're good. We're real good.
probably just right back to your 10 minute, how you're gonna change to 10-minute sermons now, you said?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that what you
Let me
Yeah.
just start right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll start right there. I'll start it and I'll set that back up for you, all right? You guys recording?
Yes, good to go.
All right. So, hey, just a minute. Don't expect me or any of your pastors to only preach for 10 minutes. I have it by good authority that you preach, what, 3 hours on a Sunday night?
No, I did preach 3 hours one day down in Jamaica.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I mean, at one time, I mean,
Yeah.
they just come to spend the day.
Yeah.
But no, I preach about 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so here we are. We're starting this church in a lounge. I have a one guy who can sing a little, who's leading singing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have another guy who's playing bass.
Mm-hmm.
So the song leader was playing his guitar, another guy was playing bass. And and then we would have a guest or
Right.
two, and then Joanne would sing every week as
Right.
well. And all of that, none of that's changed, except now we have a 8 or 9 piece band.
Right.
Some of the top musicians in Nashville have played for everybody in the music business.
Mm-hmm.
And but we still do the same thing. We'll have a couple of guests. Some of the guests that we've had are, of course, Johnny Cash and Tommy Cash family, but we've had people from the Opry. Many of them have a pastor, Skeeter Davis, Roy Drusky, Bill Carlisle. We've had a lot of those people from the Opry and stuff that would come and sing for us, and we still we'll have every week we have two, or most time we have two guests, and then Joanne, and so there's about 8 or 9 songs or more, and these musicians come in an hour early and learn all those songs.
Is that right?
And then we go out and play it live. We're live and have been for almost 20 years. We were one of the first churches to actually
Live stream?
live stream.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it ever since. The people who are supposed to know say we have the potential to reach 200 million people
And that's something.
on a Sunday morning.
Well, I know that you reach my family members in West Virginia would tune in to you every Sunday morning.
Yeah.
But here is the beautiful thing. God led you to this. Very unusual. I know you had pushback about being in a bar and calling yourself a church. And I think all of us might reflect at that at first, until we look back at the history, until we look back at the biblical command to go out in the highways and the byways and compel them to come in. But the first time that the Tennessean was ever color photographed, what was the photo on the front?
The first time that Tennessee in the paper, in the newspaper, ever used color on their paper, the picture on the front page was me preaching in front of a lighted Budweiser guitar in the bar.
In the bar.
And that thing went to UPI
Yeah.
and all of that, and I got calls from all over the world.
Yeah.
And then we were going to have Johnny Cash sing one Sunday morning. Well, we didn't have a band, but there was a writer's night there in that Holiday Inn every Sunday night. And that guy, I got to meet this guy with his band and everything because he was coming in, setting up after we were done.
Right.
And anyway, I said, so I went to the lounge on Sunday night, to the writer's night, and I met with those guys. I said, would you guys like to play behind Johnny Cash next Sunday morning?
No.
Well, let me pray about it, yes. And so they did, and they every one of them got saved
Isn't that
sitting,
amazing? Wow.
playing on Sunday morning.
Wow.
And we still have at least one. We have two members from that band that are still with us 31 years
That's
later.
amazing. So you went from the Sweetwater Lounge after 5 years. Where did you move to next?
The Texas Troubadour Theater,
Which is right near Opry.
yeah, right across
Yeah.
from the Opryland Hotel.
Yeah.
And we've been there ever since.
Isn't that amazing? And so basically you have how many services on a Sunday morning?
We just have one
Just
service
have the
on
one
Sunday
service on
morning.
Sunday morning. And then you'll have, now this is what strikes me. You have a service in a bar or a Troubadour Theater, so to speak. And what's brilliant about this is people come to Nashville, and what do they want? They want the Nashville experience. They want to make a weekend out of it. And so, and a lot of people would say, well, what do you do on Sunday morning? There's nothing to do in Nashville on Sunday morning but church. So you create a church, call it a cowboy church. And by the way, I have paid homage to you today. Look at that.
I saw that.
So that people who have nothing to do on a Sunday morning have an opportunity to go out and see live music right there close by. And how many people typically, of course, pre-COVID, would attend on a Sunday morning?
Anywhere between 300 and 500.
See, that's amazing. And many of them are not necessarily church people.
Oh, most of them, probably 70% of all of the people pre-COVID
Yes.
would have been either unchurched or at least not a regular
Yeah.
in a church somewhere. So I'd have 50% of my crowd would be first-time visitors.
And that's something. So they show up. They're hearing great music, gospel music. Is full. We call it gospel music because it's full of the good news of Christ. Maybe a testimony, certainly a message, even though it's really short. And they get the gospel. And so over the years, you've had a number of people who have come to faith in Christ through the Cowboy Church's ministry. Do you have any idea how many people maybe?
Yeah, I kind of.
Can you kind of share that with us?
Yeah. I can tell you that even during the COVID, I can count on both my hands the number of times somebody didn't get saved on a Sunday morning. Okay, from day one.
Yeah.
We started out with 6 people, and one person got saved.
Wow.
And they did every week for years. And we had over 300 stand to accept the Lord one Easter Sunday.
Wow. Wow.
So I mean, it's I don't want. I'm not bragging about it.
No. I asked you. Yeah.
You know,
No, we give the praise to God anyway.
I would say between 600,000 and 700,000 people
Wow.
that have. And what we do with these people, this
Yeah.
is what's important.
Yeah, this
because
is important.
Just having them stand and accept the Lord, if they don't go to church, I really had a problem with that because you've got to be able to place somebody somewhere.
Right.
So I have a few directories of churches that we have been in over those 16 years that are good churches from different denominations.
Right.
And so what we have done is we have altar workers who take a little card, much like Billy Graham.
Right.
They fill it out and answer 3 questions, one of 3 questions. I gave my heart to the Lord today for the first time. I rededicated my life to the Lord, or I have a home church. If they have a home church, we don't do anything with those cards except say thank you for being here. If they don't have a home church, on Monday, my secretary, my sister, will send a copy of that decision card to a church close to where this person lives.
Wow. That's awesome.
And we've gotten letters and emails and everything else from people all over the country saying, thank you. This particular person has been going to our church for several months now, and they're one of my associates, or they're a board member, or you know, it's an amazing ministry. It
Oh.
really is.
Well, I
And
tell
I'm
you.
just sitting here trying to figure out.
And now there are about how many cowboy churches in the United States?
Well, we were the first one in the U.S. The only other one was up in Canada,
Right.
Calgary, Alberta, which is home of the world's greatest rodeo, the
Right.
Calgary Stampede. And but when we started ours, we were the only one in the U.S. Now there's over 5,000
Isn't
of
that
them.
amazing?
We've
5,000.
actually started 26 or so out of our church.
And that's something. Well, listen, I also want to get to this before we close today, because here's where I think the brilliance of your ministry is. Number one, you found a place where there's going to be people. You found something that connects with them. You found where they were and you went there instead of trying to get them to come into where you are. But at the same time, I know in your heart, for them, for those people, that's church on a Sunday morning. But for the people that are part of your church from Sunday to Sunday, that's really where they do their work. The real church, the fellowship, the discipleship, the growth happens here in Goodlettsville at the ranch house.
Right.
And that's a much smaller group than what you'd have on Sunday morning.
Oh, yeah.
But you have an intimate fellowship. They go deeper into scriptures. But they take that small group and they blow that up because they serve on that Sunday morning and they see this kind of results. To me, this is where this is beautiful. The church isn't saying, well, we're going to make our church service what the cowboy church is on a Sunday morning and just only preach these things. What you have is you have a deep worship service that's for your folks, but then they go outside of themselves and they create another place where people can come into the top of the funnel, so to speak, where they can connect with Christ. I don't know what that would look like for us or for any of your church out there, but I do know this. When you pray what you prayed, God, what is it you want me to do? And then you're open to the possibilities that God starts to plant in your heart and your mind. And then you follow him as he opens and closes doors. It might just be absolutely amazing what he will do to do that.
Well, we're still looking for greater opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
But I've never quit looking for him to do more. Because to me, it's like, all I'm doing is it's kind of like paying your car payment or your house payment. It's your reasonable service because you owe it.
And what a beautiful story, Harry. In my heart, to see where God took you from a broken marriage, to you and your wife both, and children that were separated from their other parent, and to see how God took you, put you on the road, gave you that experience, gave you that network, brings you back to Nashville, and has you here for the passing of Joanne's mama, and then opens up the door and literally hundreds of thousands of people's lives are changed because you were obedient to God. You were willing to think outside the box. You were willing to take the hits. And by the way, I think it's absolutely biblical that you go out in the highways and byways. If you can go out into a bar and win somebody to Christ, I don't know that you call the bar the sacred space, so to speak, but that's certainly where you find lost people. And so, but by the way, when the gospel's been preached there, it becomes a sacred space, isn't it?
I think I can bring all this together
Go right ahead.
with one statement here. With us on Sunday morning, I kept looking around Nashville for those 3 months we were at our daughter's house. Mm-hmm. There were 1,500 churches. The population in Nashville, Tennessee, on Sunday morning at that time, and maybe still after this COVID, again, 40% of the population of this city was tourists and musicians.
Isn't that amazing?
And there was no churches built for tourists and musicians. And tourists, it had to be a come as you are church because tourists don't bring three-piece suits
Right.
on vacation, and musicians don't own one.
Right.
So to me, that would sum the whole thing up. It's God saw a need and asked me if I'd fill it.
And you were
And I
willing.
said, what do you want me to do?
Well, I got to say, on behalf of the kingdom, thank you for your faithfulness.
Thank you.
Personally, thank you for your friendship. And
thank you
we're
for that.
thankful that you are part of this great community. I'm looking forward. You say you'll be willing to bring Miss Joanne back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of your guys' personal stories.
Can't do it in 30 minutes.
All right, maybe we'll break that up into a couple. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for being willing to listen to this great story, and we hope that you'll join us again here in Gospel Compass. God bless.